when we're talking about peripheral nerve stimulation, this is a great option. I think you have a lot of nerve targets, especially when it's coming to the back, right? So we want to try to be as focal as possible. So for axial back pain, usually I'm going after the medial branch nerves or the cluneal nerves, right? So you're going to have to go after each side if it's bilateral or ipsilateral if it is just one-sided. Some of the things you take into consideration for spinal cord stimulation, you're still going to take into account here, right? So such as where's the patient wear the belt line? Are they going to be able to reach the area of their back where they're going to have the wearable for the external component, right? Because they're going to have usually an external battery pack, or if it's a permanently implanted device, right? Just making sure it's not on their sit line. So I'll mark them off in the preoperative area, and then again in the OR to see where anatomical guidelines are. Typically, there's different types of systems here. We're going to be showing an anode cathode type system. And so we're going to want to be as close as possible to our target nerves. So here we have on the imaging, right? We have a patient who's had multiple fractures and kyphoplasties or vertebral augmentation done, and instead now they have chronic pain. So what do? You try facet blocks, you try ablations and epidurals. Things aren't working. Not a surgical candidate. Peripheral nerve stimulation might be an option for this patient because they have mononeuropathy now of their medial branch nerves. And so here, I'm going to show you how to target it. So rather than bringing it down, you can see I have a needle down there in a coaxial fashion on the fluoroscopy. Instead, we're going to use this, and we're going to have a little bit of a circuitous goal. So a good way to figure out where you are with the SAP and the TP is to bring down a needle to that juncture right there. And so you get a nice coaxial view here. And I'm just tapping down right on top of the juncture there. So now I had kind of a depth guide. Now, if that's my target, right where the medial branch is going to be, I'm going to go ahead and kind of pick something that's a little bit further down and more midline. So if we take an X-ray in the fluoroscopy here, and you can see I'm just the side here of midline. So if you were going to do an implant, this might be, you can make a small midline incision, or maybe you don't even have to do one at all. And now you can actually find a course where you can bury some of this lead. And so I'm going to start here. Let's get an X-ray, and we're going to work our way towards that junction. X-ray. And I'm going to want to make bony contact, and I'm just going to kind of walk off here. Good sign is when I see that needle moving. Shot here. I'm going to walk it a little bit further. Great. Shot there. Great. So at this point, I'm going to switch to a lateral view. And we're going to go ahead and test. Well, not test. We're going to check our imaging here. So just something to note here, intraoperatively, I always do testing. If it's going to be sensory stimulation, make sure it's in the area. When I have them on the table before I administer any type of local anesthesia or sedation, I'm also going to go ahead and make sure that we kind of outline the area of the patient's maximal pain. We're going to just need a little bit further here, and we're actually just going to thread the needle now, thread the lead down, and hopefully you don't meet too much resistance. A little pop here. Okay. So we can pull that back. Remember, this is going laterally, so there's not concern for being anywhere near the epidural space. And so slide up north a little bit here. Great. You can see we're just going over the TP there, come back to an AP. And so we're going to have a little bit of redundancy here. And this is actually the same approach that I would use in a permanently implanted multifidus stimulator as I would for sensory stimulation of the medial branch nerves. Go ahead, get a little caught tilt here. Great. And so now I would back the lead out, shot there, and we would test, pull us back a little bit. Remember, this is a smaller nerve, and in essence, this is macro stimulation here. So this is kind of the type of view that you want. And take a shot there. Advanced. As you can see, right, there could be the potential for some anterior grade migration. So if you're using a system that has tines, and they're not bidirectional tines, you want to make sure that you maybe go ahead and at your incision site here on the lumbar spine, when you dissect down, you throw a little an O-ethibond or some non-absorbable suture there to prevent that anterior grade migration as there's flexion and extension of the spine. That's one of the things we're noticing that could potentially happen. So that's what you want to try to mitigate. Okay, so this is that typical trajectory. But what if that pain's lower down? So we do the testing, and like, well, actually, I feel it lower. or I feel a bit to the side, right? So, or maybe you thought what was SI joint pain, but it wasn't, right? So the cluneal nerves, right, especially the superior cluneal nerves come from, T11, T12, all the way down to L3 dorsal rama. They branch off there, right? They go through the lumbar sacral fascia. They come down through this osteofibrous tunnel right on the top of the iliac crest, right? So that's where they kind of point a little bit higher up on the buttock or lower down the spine, the kind of in-between area. And on a physical exam, you can actually go ahead and palpate and do a Tenel's right on top of the area where they have that pain. And oftentimes that superior cluneal nerve will actually refer out to the lateral hip and may get confused with greater trochanteric pain syndrome or bursitis, when in reality it's something different. So when that's the case, or the patient's undergone maybe a fusion, they did grafting there, or there was bone marrow biopsy, or they have increased tone in the setting of Parkinson's, things of that nature, you may get entrapment of this nerve. Good way to figure it out, you could do a local anesthetic blockade on the top of the nerve, just to kind of figure out that's the target you want to be going after, but nothing's going to suffice for the tests like a neuromodulation trial. So in this case, let's go ahead and get rid of our cephalad tilt here. Good, and slide south a little bit, please. Good, and slide in towards you a little bit, please. Great, let's take a shot here, and great. And you can see one more shot here. And again, so right here is the top of the iliac crest. You can palpate it. You can feel the bony prominence. It's maybe to try to reduce your fluoroscopy imaging. And so you're going to want to usually go somewhat contralateral oblique. So let's try maybe 20 degrees contralateral oblique here. And we'll take a shot there. Right. And this is also going to be kind of your safety image too. You want to make sure you don't skive too far anteriorly. And this is going to be the view to know that you're staying more posterior, or at least on the top of that. You don't need to be right down on top of the bone, but the bone does serve as a good landmark for where you're going. Keeping in mind, obviously, that a 14 gauge needle is going to be much more painful than a smaller needle. So if you need to find that trajectory, you can use a 25 gauge or 22 gauge, whatever you want to use. But once you have some type of trajectory down towards the area, you want to go ahead and get started. So take a shot there. And so I'm heading towards the bone here. And so what I usually do is I try to make some type of contact, shot there, and then switch over. So I made contact here, and I'm going to flip that up and away because I don't need to skive right off that or cause any neural injury. So let's go back to an AP now. No, we can get rid of the tilt. That's fine. Keep it where it is. Great. And we're in a good trajectory. Now, so again, this is a potential space between fascial planes. I'm going to demonstrate this just to see. I'm kind of curious myself. Sometimes the lead will just kind of fly right out. Other times you'll meet a lot of resistance, in which case you'll get a lot of coiling or direction. So take a shot there. In this case, it doesn't really want to go. So if that's the case, you're going to go ahead and restyle at your needle. And I'm just going to advance a little bit to create a little bit of a track. And you may use a little bit of a Selinger technique rather than actually just being able to advance that lead out, right? Because this is in a potential space like the epidural space. Shot there. Great. So at that point, this has come out. I'm going to back this out. Shot again. Great, and I like that. And so you're going to go ahead and test here and see the response that you get. Again, we'll check one more time here. Let's go ahead and go to this contralateral oblique view here, just to make sure that we stayed in a good position and it hasn't kind of skived off our trajectory. Great, and I like that. And it may look different each time. Sometimes it rides perfectly along that iliac crest. Sometimes it's a bit more superficial. It doesn't have to be right on top of the bone, like I said. On ultrasound, you can sometimes see neuromas here, or you can see the fascial plane. It's not one nerve like the textbooks would have you believe, just like with genicular nerves, right? It's a confluence of nerves, and there's various trajectories. That's why I think, especially when it comes to treating this area of pain, it makes a lot more sense to have a wider field of array of contacts here. And I will go ahead and let's go to an AP here. Actually do testing, try to figure out exactly which contacts are reproducing the patient's pain and mark that off in an imaging. That way, for the permanent, we can go ahead and really just focally kind of isolate that and ideally use a time type system to keep it in place. Shot there? Great. So I'm going to go ahead and back this out now. Shot there. Now, one of the things you just kind of have to keep in mind with peripheral nerve stimulation in general, especially when you're doing a permanent implant, is you can't drop right down on top of it, the nerve, like you would maybe in a nerve block, right? You have to take this bit of a circuitous route to get there so you can actually have a nice trajectory so these contacts can be along the nerve, and so that you can bury enough of the lead in place here. So you can see these leads are both kind of coming into place here. Normally, what I would have done is I would have made, for a permanent implant, I would have made a small incision. You want to commit to some type of stab incision. In this case, I didn't do it yet, but ahead of time, so you're not cutting around the nerve. And the reason you want to, take the time to go ahead and do this ahead of time is because you don't want to damage that lead and all the hard work you've done. But more importantly, if you just drop that needle right through the skin initially, what ends up, like we did it from the start, what ends up happening is when you go to tunnel that lead back in to put the permanent implant, it's going to go right through that subcuticular layer of tissue. And it might not be today, might not be in a week, might not be in a month, might be in a year. That lead will eventually find its way to the surface and it will erode through. So you want to commit to an incision. Just an 11-blade stab incision will work, getting through the deep dermal layer, just so that when you bury that lead, right, it's going to stay underneath the skin. So let's assume we had now done that. So it was treating it more like a trial. Now I'm treating it more like an implant. And now we want to take these leads. We want to bring it over somewhere where we can implant them. So I've made a small incision here. Usually the incisions, you'll measure it out with your needle. If you're using a receiver-based system, they're kind of hash marked off. And if you're using the implanted IPG version, it will go ahead and you can kind of measure the distance. You'll get the length of your lead based on the size of your patient, the habitus, and the target. So, but you want to commit to whatever it is. You're going to have an incision again a little bit further away. Usually, it's going to be 1 centimeter to 2 centimeters, something very small. Again, down to get through that subcuticular and deep dermal. And then you're actually going to use the needle. I think using a tunneler is a bit overkill, to be quite honest, with most of these. And you're going to bring this back up and through the area that you had gone ahead and made a little stab incision through. So we're going to tunnel this out now. Maybe. I'm a lefty on the wrong side. Okay. So pull the inner part of that needle out, and we're going to tunnel this back through and bring it into our pocket. As you pull this out, what you will notice, I kind of just keep my eye here, and this is a pressure. You're going to see a small loop, and all of a sudden when that pressure goes away, that lead will pop right down under and in, okay? You're going to do the same thing for the other lead. Hopefully I've undermined this enough here. Now, what I was talking to you about before, especially for some of the locations where you might get some anterior grade migration, like the lumbar medial branch, is you might actually decide to make this incision a little bit bigger, right? And then what you would do is you put down a non-absorbable suture and just actually lightly tie down that lead right down to the fascia so it doesn't move. Again, here's that little loop, and once it goes away, it'll pop under. Good. Now, there is a proprietary tunneling tool for one of the small micro IPG implants. I don't have it here with me right now, but in this similar fashion, you would then undermine and kind of go in this direction here to put the implant in. And you'd want to actually palpate it. So unlike, let's say, SCS, where you'd want to have it deeper, here you'd want it much more superficial, kind of in between that subcuticular and deep dermal layer. So it's, you might actually get some more resistance. This is usually the most painful part of the procedure. So you make sure you localize that typically with a spinal needle. If you're going ahead and using the receiver system, really it's just, again, the similar concept. You're going to bring that excess receiver down, and you're going to anesthetize that track. With the excess lead that you have, you'll have connected, what you'll do is you'll connect a receiver. You'll connect a receiver to the end of the lead, and once that's connected, you'll trim it to the appropriate size, and then go ahead and coil up the residual lead so that you can communicate with it. Once you make that little coil, you want to use some non-absorbable sutures and go ahead and adhere it to 2 places, and then you'll go ahead and use non-absorbable suture to go ahead and adhere it down to the fascia. That's it. If you have a target for the nerve in terms of a pain location, you can target it with peripheral nerve stimulation. Like I said, there's a lot of different targets or things or ways we can get around it, right? Someone with refractory foot pain, say that didn't get better with the tarsal tunnel release surgery, or didn't get better and still has neuropathic foot pain from various reasons, but we think it's in that distribution. Go ahead and try on that. Maybe they're not a candidate for a conventional, other types of neuromodulation, dorsal ganglion stimulation, or for spinal cord stimulation, especially in the upper extremities. I think this is where the other types of dorsal column stim and DRG are having, the data hasn't quite gotten there. Peripheral nerve stimulation definitely has a leg up, but don't be afraid to kind of combine it with various other options. But this has been something that's been pretty helpful in our practices.
All right, fantastic. So questions, comments, peripheral nerve stimulation. So I have a question for you, Ellie. What is your favorite peripheral nerve target currently?
The one where the testing goes the easiest. So pure sensory nerves. For me, the smaller the nerve and the more sensory innervated, the better the easier it is to get the testing. I think the procedure is very intuitive in terms of targeting. It's getting the outcomes right. It's the art of it.
Yes.
So for me, saphenous nerve has been very effective for medial knee pain, where most people get their pain. So that gives rise to the infrapatellar branch, which is where most people complain of pain, right? Inferior, medial, anterior knee. So rather than targeting the geniculars, for me, I like to target that, and it's kind of the umami lights up the entire knee. That and suprascapular, where there's actually been some really good data. That innervates about 70% of the shoulder. It's just how we do our blocks as well, right? So it's a very fluid progression of what we're already doing, right? It's just the long-acting block when we were doing previously, it hasn't had longer-term outcomes.
Right. Fantastic. Well, now we are at the time where we will transition to the lab. We are actually approximately on time, as on time as we've ever been. And so just go ahead and change, grab